kind of people, the number of people who own digital cameras is far more. It's far more. So cinema in itself is becoming democratic. Now again, this question arises again: do we need to come to FTI to learn cinema? Because now equipments have become so cheap, and it's become so accessible, because they didn't have access to these equipments to even get trained. Now this question arises, that should we be learning to make films when we have all the equipments by ourselves? That's where FTI needs to be relevant right now, because FTI is not just right now being a polytechnic institute which is being projected by a lot of powers, which is being projected by government. There are certain sensibilities that we learn here towards cinema, and it has its own plurality. How do we articulate them in our cinema is what are we trying to learn here. Not actually just lighting, not actually just sound recording, not actually just art direction and production design. So that's how I think FTI is moving towards now. And it's really important, because there was a phase when FTI was strictly being only polytechnic.
FTI as a space is also important because people from all parts of the country and all classes, all castes and thrown away places, you know, people from villages, people from urban city, they all come together for one project. So it takes so much negotiation, deliberation. It is so painful yet so enriching when we start working as a team and begin to see eye to eye. Now there a lot of barriers go down. And then comes the second one, comes this honesty with self, and then comes the second stage where one is put in a position where you realize yourself but then also empathize with the other, you know. And that journey is quite a painful journey, and the amount of tolerance and acceptance that we are encouraged for the sake of our craft, you know, because I can only, as an editing student, I can only do justice to my craft when I'm able to empathize with what my direction student is trying to say, irrespective of whether I agree, don't agree, or I have experienced or not experienced what he or she is trying to depict in that film.
A place like the Film Institute, or also the other film institutes, this is something that it's not just for ticking a box. It has a very, very important role to play, and that role may not be what the government wants it to play, but that does not undermine its role, and that does not also say that this is not doing important work.
See, just a minute, Ranjit. I'm just saying, this white elephant in all these words, okay? First of all, one has to understand it. The problem has been that we've always looked at art institutions as being these isolated figures, as you mentioned in your earlier question. These isolated spots, they are not, okay? They're also part of the, whether we want it or not, they're also part of the market forces. Increasingly, India, being a post-liberalization, India has been moving into this direction of, well, let's set up industries, let's get more FDI, okay? And in that sense, okay, so clearly the society's mandate, in a way, right or wrong, is moving towards a certain kind of result-oriented education, which management, I'm not saying management or engineering, they're lesser courses or anything, but these are courses which give you instant employment, instant results, while as Ranjit and everyone was mentioning here, something of this sort is not that instantaneous if you want, say, a certain quality from your work.
We had a couple of our students visiting the Beijing University and interacting with film students, and it is surprising that even a country like China, the amount of government support in terms of infrastructure, in terms of funds given to Beijing Film Academy, to their students, is far more than what India is offering to its own film students. And they are a very aggressive economy, they have a very aggressive economic model in place. But in spite of that, if their state is believing that films are important, and their films and their autonomy of those institutes, keeping those in place, because these films are competing in international film competitions, you know, and there one cannot just simply send government related programs, you know, these are authentic films made by these students.
Interesting thing to add in all this conversation, how the state has been looking at this institute right from the inception of this institute. It was started in 1960. And if you look at the way the parallel cinema started around 1969, incidentally, all the films financed by the Film Finance Corporation had our FTII cinematographer as a cinematographer. So there was a contribution started from FTII also towards the parallel cinema, and the state was also started funding and supporting. So it started coming till 90s. There was a parallel cinema movement, and FTII has been doing right from the beginning. FTII has been existing, but after 90s, the way how the government is adapting, the state is adapting the Western policy of the globalization, liberalization. Somewhere it drifted some of the state approach towards this kind of institutes like this, and the support system for the films being produced, who comes out from places, there is a shift. The state started looking towards this, but this place doesn't lose its relevance. But in the state eyes, they are looking at it in a different.
यहाँ आने के बाद I really feel more responsible about society. I learned a lot here in 4 years, जो मैंने अपने पहले के 20-25 सालों में नहीं सीखा. अब की आर्ट के थ्रू भी मैं यहाँ पे आई थी बहुत ऐसे इंस्पायर होकर कि मुझे कुछ फिल्म्स बनानी है, एंड आई वाज इंस्पायर्ड बाय द बॉलीवुड फिल्म्स ओनली. पर यहाँ पे आके तो मुझे समझ में आया फिल्म्स का एक अलग रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. सो आई थिंक अब जो 4 साल हैं वो मैं अपने पूरे लाइफ में जीने वाली हूँ. सो दैट इज़ FTII फॉर मी.
Yeah, I just add to that. It's what you said about us living in bubble and all these contentions about confusions about material versus art. You know, she summed it up real aptly. And our hesitation in when you said, put it in one sentence, is just the responsibility one. You come here thinking I'm going to make a film, and you're a smart, energetic person. But as you go through FTII, you realize the responsibility of even putting out one shot or one sentence, and the responsibility that we have towards the other person who's watching what we are putting out or reading what we are putting out. So that, yes, the space is really brought in.
Yeah, and also I suppose, when one comes here, one realizes that it is, cinema is not just about technology.
Yeah.
It is so much more than that. And to understand that itself, it seems to me, takes a lifetime.
For the outside world, with a layman's view, what is FTII? I'm thinking FTII is like parallel to an institute like, say, Kalakshetra, or an institute like Lalit Kala Academy. Obviously, what does Lalit Kala Academy do? It trains in fire. What does Kalakshetra do? It trains in dance. But in Kalakshetra, you don't learn dance for the sake of performance or giving out performance. You learn a lot what is dance and what it is, and philosophically what it is, how it enriches us, how it makes us think, and how we can communicate, and how we can make it a how a performance of Bharatanatyam can actually work like a network of neurons, connecting minds with minds and evoking a common thought. Similarly, here also we learn films, but also the philosophy of that film and that craft.
I think he summarizes it. It's actually how this place actually makes us aware of how we're thinking, and that's really important in today's times. I mean, if you're not, because we're all apparently thinking, but we're all thinking, and our thoughts are actually a cog in the wheel, and FTII actually helps us break that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why it becomes difficult to follow that model of a cog in the wheel.